Welcome back for the second session. So we'll be addressing the topic TV broadcasters advanced advertising strategy. So for this panel, we have the pleasure to welcome Stu Jones, Head of Product Hub and Hub Plus at ITV, and then Christian Godske, Head of Innovation Addressable TV2 Denmark. So for this session, we'll be having Ophélie Boucaud, Market Analyst at Dataxis, as moderator. So Ophélie, you have the hand.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. For our audience, don't hesitate to send questions during the discussion that we'll try to integrate in our panel. And if not, we will answer at the end of this session. So as a starter, I would like to ask you to introduce the services you're working on, because you're both working for the main TV broadcasters in your market and you are operating DtoC platforms. So what are the business models that you chose and how are advertising revenues integrated in those? If Christian could start, please.
Yeah, so we're running an OTT service in the Danish market called DtoC Play. Actually, it's a service that we've been online with since 2004. So we've done this for a number of years now. And this includes both our live TV channels, but also our video on demand library. And in both situations, we have advertising as part of that business model. In the live scenarios, we're doing live ad insertions. And obviously for video on demand, there's an option for the consumers if they want a reduction in price to have advertising in front of the video on demand content.
Okay, Stu.
Yeah, so I'm Stu Jones. I'm head of product for Hub and Hub Plus. And so the ITV Hub is the subsidiary of ITV, the main channel in the UK. And we operate a digital catch-up service and also a discovery service for VOD content as well. So we have two models. One is our AVOD, so the advertising platform, which I'm sure we'll talk more about in this session. And the second one is a paid service to watch ad-free that we call Hub Plus.
Okay, thank you. So as a starter, we could talk about the fact that OTT platforms are now operating on very competitive advertising markets where you have TV broadcasters, but also digital platforms like Google and Facebook retaining a huge part of revenues. Why did you choose to go with advertising video on demand models on both your platforms in this context?
Do you want me to take that one first?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. So I think, from our side, obviously we keep very close to the market trends, and ITV, we always want to be on the front foot when it comes down to the direction of the market, and we can easily see, and it's easy to try and trace, certainly with data playing such a big part, that we can really start understanding the transition between the likes of linear traditional marketing to programmatic online marketing. And so, for us, we can see where that money flows. And obviously we want to make sure that ITV at the forefront, not just from a financial perspective, but also to try and give the market the flexibility that we think they need as well. So Planet V, which I'll talk about as we go through this, it's our fully programmatic platform designed by ITV for the TV industry. And so, the opportunities that creates is both for ITV, but also for the advertising industry as well. And the reason that we've invested so heavily and we've built it with ITV's, a partnership to try and gauge where the market currently sits and to try and take advantage of those markets as well, is because we see this huge opportunity that isn't currently being taken advantage of. And we're hopefully building a tool that fits in place to really fill that gap.
From our side, it's also a fairly easy choice. I mean, we've been in the market now with advertising on broadcast TV for about 30 years. So that value proposition is fairly well understood by the consumers. They know that we carry advertising. So it's easy for us to carry this advertising into our addressable TV opportunity. Also because we're not extending the ad load. We're not adding any more ads to it. It's pretty much the same ad load. We're just making the ads more relevant. We're making the ads more targeted. The plus side for the consumer is obviously that we're also being very transparent about it right now, saying that if you sign up to this video on demand option, you can get a reduction in price of about €4 a month if you have advertising in front of it. If you don't want to have advertising, you can pay a premium and you get rid of the ads. And I think this is well understood in the market that, I mean, you either pay with your attention and your time, or you pay with your money. And having this lower price point is also really interesting from a new market acquisition point of view, because it means that we're able to offer a good product at a rather low price, which means that we've been able to attract a lot of younger consumers onto our platform.
Mm-hmm. What can you tell me, Stu, on this viewers' acceptance of ad? Because you also have this two system with one platform including advertising and one ad-free subscription. What are the usage patterns that you see?
Yeah, so the reason that Hub Plus exists, which is the ad-free offering, is because we saw a niche of people who obviously wanted to consume the content, but were also prepared to pay to remove the ad barrier as well. And they're much more the typical binge viewer, so the people who want to sit with content on and have it continually play through. And so we see various segmentations of users that come in specifically for Hub Plus usage. As an example, Love Island is one of our bigger shows on ITV, and it commands a huge number, millions and millions of people come in to watch it every year. And obviously we see a huge spike then related to Hub. And we also see a huge spike related to Hub Plus. It's because that kind of mentality of watching every day, binging on that content, watching subsequent content as well, it means that people see the ads as more of a barrier for them to consume at the speed they want to be able to do so. So Hub Plus is really an offering to be able to say, if you don't want the adverts, here's the price bracket that you will pay, and that gives you that option. You still see advertising when it comes down to simulcast, so they're not completely devoid from the model of AVOD, which is why we don't typically call Hub Plus an SVOD service, because it still has the simulcast advertisement in there as well. So for us, they're a really profitable consumer because they pay for advertising catch free, but they also consume ads when they're watching live simulcast content as well.
Okay. One thing that you mentioned also is that as traditional TV broadcasters, you're also on a specific market which distinguishes you from other digital actors. And there, I think you could capitalize on the TV medium trustability.
Yeah.
Do you see that also with the advertisers coming towards you for working with your OTT platform?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So often the packages we extend out the linear package to people who come in to try and purchase advertisement from us from a linear perspective, and the upsell opportunities are there. And I think we all know, from a programmatic perspective, and certainly online, we can target very specifically certain segments in a way that we never have been able to do so before. The balance between the data that you collect on someone and the precision by which you target them is that constant battle and balance that we have to fulfill. And, I'm proud to work for a company that really does regard privacy and data privacy at the forefront of what they do. So everything we do goes through that very, very scrutinized legal lens. And as a result, what we have at the end is very well sanitized, data protected, sort of pool of information about people that we can really then target, and people then understand how their data is being used, which is super important for us. So we can give confidence to people. And I think that's where the brand in ITV really does excel, because we can take that linear brand of the comfort and the familiarity of ITV and transition that to an ad market online as well. And I think that really works in our favor.
And just to second that point of view, I mean, we have the same kind of credibility, also being the biggest broadcaster in the Danish market. And again, expanding that further by having a billing relationship directly with consumers means it's fairly easy for us to actually reach out to them in the onboarding process, saying that, well, you have selected a price plan with advertising in front of video on demand. Could we please get to know you a little bit better? Because it's in our shared interest to be able to serve you more targeted and more relevant advertising. And we enjoy that relationship. And we're also very cautious about how we leverage and how we use that data. One initiative that we launched some time ago is actually a platform which is called My TV2 Play, which gives the users full access to all the data that we've stored on them and also how we use that data. So there's full transparency from the consumer's point of view. If they think they're getting the wrong ads or they don't quite know why they're getting these ads, they can actually go in and see, we target you because we have this data set available. If this is incorrect, or if you don't want to be targeted by ads, you can delete all that data if you want that.
Okay, thank you. Another question would be, since you are also both traditional broadcasters, you're used to do multicast content delivery. So having your own DtoC platform is something very different, and you there get access to a fully customized platform with UX and UI in your control. How do you use that to also integrate new ad formats, for example, banners that you could not put on traditional TV broadcast?
Yeah. So from our perspective, we've gone through a redesign and rebuild of our entire digital platforms, everything from our iOS and Android applications to our web browser to our connected TVs. There was many reasons to do that. There was a legacy reason around technology. There was a need to kind of be perceived as a modern digital platform, and by that it means to make sure we can react to the market. But one of the third key reasons was that we want to be able to create the inventory that programmatic advertising is making for us. You know, we are here because of the ad market, so we need to make sure that we can accommodate the demand. And so looking for ways in which we can blend in, and using the word blend in carefully, because we want to make sure that a few things. One, the consumer knows when they're being advertised to, that they know when the advertisement is relevant to them, but also that the experience isn't deterred by that. And so you see, examples in the UK of websites. I used to work for for newspapers, and the number of ads they need to serve on a homepage makes it look more like a kind of referral site than an actual homepage itself. And so that real balance of giving the consumer what they want, which is the experience they expect, which is entirely based around finding the content they want to view, but also creating unique advertisement upsell opportunities, such as banners, as you mentioned before, and unique ways in which we can use video on the platform without necessarily linking people out to play a consumer to an ad server that plays a very specific ad that's outside of our control. So with the ability of Planet V that we've introduced, we are getting to those phases of consumer versus advertiser balance.
Mm-hmm. Christian, I know that the Danish market, when it comes to advertising, is more constraining in terms of formats. Could you please tell us how that works on your platform?
So unfortunately, we don't really have the same flexibility in terms of adding new formats to the platform. So when it comes to the TV advertising, whatever we can do, and particularly on our broadcast platforms, it's limited to doing ad blocks. We can't even do ad breaks. We can't add any kind of overlays, new formats, anything else. But on the plus side, though, I mean, serving the traditional TV ad is actually working out quite well for us. And part of that is, well, I mean, a 30-second spot still works, in particular if it actually gets viewed by real people. So it's been fairly easy for us to go to the media agencies, the big advertisers who believe in brand advertising, and tell them that, well, what we offer you guys is actually all the good stuff that you know from television, the stuff that helped build your brands initially, but we can now deliver that targeted on our platforms and still making sure that it's being completed, being seen by real people in a trusted, credible environment. So really, what's not to like about it?
Yeah. True. Okay. So larger question, what kind of advertisers are working with you on this platform then? Because as traditional TV broadcasters, you have a huge range of advertisers working with you for years. Are those still the main targets of those opportunities you're giving on the DtoC platforms, or do you also have new businesses coming to you with smaller or niche targets or target audiences? Christian, if you want to start.
Yeah. So I mean, when we launched the Addressable TV offering, there was no doubt that the initial money came from the traditional TV advertisers. It came from the media agencies, because again, I talked about this younger demographics. So something like 60% of our users are below the age of 40. And if you look at a traditional broadcast market, that's fairly young. So the upside, the benefit of advertising and combining traditional broadcast TV with addressable was easily understood by the media buyers. So it's just a matter of reallocating some money to talk about incremental reach to make sure you reach, in particular, the younger demographic. Currently, we have about 20% of our revenue coming in from programmatic. So part of that is obviously, again, making this transition into getting access to digital budgets, getting access to budgets that would otherwise potentially end up with Facebook or YouTube. And a lot of that is also now coming in from smaller advertisers. Advertisers were running a big national TV campaign would otherwise have been prohibited because it would have been too costly. They can now run targeted ads around their cities, around the core demographics that they want to reach, or even using their own data to cherry pick who they want to show this ad to. And one step that we've taken to actually increase this even further, because we think this is a pretty big growth potential, is that we're running a beta right now of a self-service booking tool, which is intended for small and medium-sized advertisers. It's probably not going to be the breakthrough around the corner, but in bigger cities where you have real estate brokers, you've got automotive dealerships who have the right kind of creative material for this, but it makes sense for them that they advertise and tell people when their store is open, where they are located, what's the name of the dealer is, all that kind of stuff. So we're pushing this into the market now to really try and get a foothold in this small and medium-sized enterprises market.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a similar observation for us as well. You still obviously get those big media buyers. They're always going to be there, and they understand the kind of the sway they have on the market as well. So I think that's never going to go away. But I think what we're seeing with introducing the sort of self-serve programmatic advertising sort of purchasing of campaigns is that it doesn't take we can help people through that journey by the nature of giving them the ability to be able to use both our data and third-party data as well that they've got access to create something they've never seen themselves before. And when you start giving people visibility of the reach, and you give people visibility of the transactions that are occurring, the CPMs that are occurring from the campaigns that they've bought as well, that's much more empowering than dealing with people via a phone. So the more we can give, and the more we can put it into the hands of different people, from the very large organizations right down to the very small, even the independent, small one-man operation, they still benefit from this as a service because of the transparency that this is able to give them as well. So I think very similar to Christian, we see that full range, but we're also seeing the newer people coming in who are more comfortable actually with programmatic and self-service than they would have been picking up the phone and having a conversation with somebody about buying an ad.
Kind of interesting, and just to add to that one as well, we also see that they're buying television in a different way than the traditional advertisers. So normally the big advertisers would run, 4-6 campaigns a year, something like that. Whereas the digital ones that we're getting in here kind of knows how they use data and leverage that data. I mean, they are now running ads on addressable television on a continuous basis, similar to what they would be doing on search advertising, or similar to how they would potentially also handle social media, to make sure that you still have these campaigns to tell people about your product, about your brand, and about your benefits, but you also have this kind of underlying layer here to kind of cherry pick the lowest hanging fruit, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we just had a question which is also related to that. So from Katie Nikanen, have you found that advertisers are creating different content for addressable TV than traditional, or most are just using the same content that they would use for traditional broadcast?
It's one for you, Christian. I think if you've got any insight, I haven't any insight on that.
Sadly, I would have to say that most of our advertisers run the same creatives as they are on television. And it's not because I have a problem with the ad copy or the 30-second TV ad, but I'm not seeing the kind of customization or the kind of number variants that I would expect to. So people pay to have targeted ads, but they typically end up running the same one that they would be running on broadcast TV anyway. So I don't believe necessarily that the future is that we need to run 6-second ads or anything unique or extraordinary, but I would like to see more tailored advertising, more customized advertising towards that particular segment.
Yeah, I think just to build on that as well. So we often typically have long form content, 30 minutes, 1 hour. We're looking at shorter formats, and I think that's the point. No one really wants to watch 2 minutes of adverts and then 15 seconds of a clip. So I think it's important that, can you monetize those 15-second, 30-second clips by putting in a 2-second, 1 second advert or a sting. You know, I think we have to kind of roll with the type of content that we've got available, just on the basis the consumer wouldn't sit through a, like say, 3 minutes of advertisement for anything less than a 3-minute piece of content. And you know, I guess we have to look at the likes of the short form content platforms like TikTok, and you know, their ability to be able to stitch in adverts almost in the same vein as the videos that you would necessarily see, or promoted content from people within there as well, where it becomes so seamless that you can't even identify the promoted content between that of the created content. I think that's when we start having to look at different types of ad format. But for now, we've got long format content on there. The 3-minute, 4-minute advertisement slot works fine.
Okay. Quick question now on your capacity to do addressability on live content. So I know, Stu, that you already mentioned earlier that live content is just screencast on ITV Hub Plus.
Yeah.
So you still have the same ads that you would have on broadcast TV. What about TV to play on this regard? Do you do dynamic ad insertion on live OTT content?
Yeah, we do that on pretty much all platforms. So whether people watch our service from a Apple TV or Chromecast or on a smartphone, I mean, we do the dynamic ad insertion solution to make sure that people get a targeted ad.
Yeah, and that is, you know, we do some of that as well. It's there's some there's some legal complications around some of the channels. It's, you know, before I joined ITV, you asked the questions, well, why can't this be on every channel, and why can't this dream variation be across all of our channels? But then you start unpicking it, and there are some complications around the legality of specific channels themselves and how they can be used, and the audiences that they use. You know, we've got a specific channel for children, which obviously is governed by different laws when it comes down to advertising. So it's not, as a kind of layman coming into it cold, I didn't realize some of the nuances that are there when it comes down to the ability to do dynamic ad insertion for everyone across all platforms.
Of course, yes. So now, rather on the technical side, what are the tools you are developing to better understand your audiences? So you mentioned the profile, mandatory registration. How does that work? And what kind of data do you collect on users thanks to those?
Yeah.
Stu, if you want
to me to go first. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so you mentioned mandatory verification. So last year we moved to needing to sign in to watch content. So obviously we want to make sure that we understand who's watching our content, and it, you know, it is a two-sided coin. One, it is so we can be more targeted with so we know who is watching the programming as well, but also so we can give personalized experiences to people outside of advertising, so we can ensure that what they see is augmented to their viewing habits, or to people like theirs viewing habits as well. And you know, it's important for us to be transparent, and so we give options on the amount of information that people are willing to share, and in turn how much they'll get back from that. And I think that's one of the mistakes at the moment that I think as an industry we're kind of making, an ad industry, is we're not transparent about we're not giving enough information on the benefits. And it feels very you know, it's very crude to say, but it feels like there's almost a swathe of opinion, which is, well, I don't want to give my data across because of how that's going to be used. But I think the mentality needs to be, I'm comfortable with my data being shared if it's used in the right way. And so the more we can give transparency about how that data is being used, which we do a lot of on the hub, we can say, well, look, we do want to personalize your experience because we want to make it the best experience for you. The flip side is you also become someone who's, you know, you can be more targeted to more relevant advertising. And I think if you give the example of, you know, what do you want to be targeted to, something that you're really, really interested in, or something that you're never going to have any interest in, because someone's always going to pick the thing that they're interested in. And I think that's where we need to try and make strides forward in that explanation about the benefit of sharing data. So yeah, so we do mandatory verification is being introduced for us as well as the ability to be able to opt in and opt out of information as people see fit, where and when.
Christian?
So our data set is primarily, obviously, we have the registration data. So when people sign up for it, we ask about name, gender, age. We also ask them, I mean, if they're only watching television through a streaming platform, because obviously that's interesting. If they're a cable cutter, that's a quite unique audience and something that advertisers are willing to pay a bit extra for. But what we found really to be a treasure trove of data is all the consumption data. So what people really watch, because we got tons of content. What platform are they watching this on? When are they watching it? I mean, not only does this help us to actually better understand who's actually sitting in front of the screen, because sometimes that's a bit difficult, because I mean, this is a big shared screen. Sometimes it's being, watched by me. Sometimes it's being watched by my 13-year-old daughter. And obviously, to be able to kind of digest the data about consumption, our system now is able to determine that, well, even though the registration data says it's a male aged 44, based on this being what's Kardashian at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a mobile phone, it's more likely to be my daughter. And we are increasingly adding also third-party data to this, so in a very transparent way. So again, we don't want to build a black box of data and say we've got loads of data from dubious sources. We want to have data from named, reputable companies saying we have the opportunity to target advertisers based on data from this particular vendor or partner. And what this allows them to do is to target you based on your preferences, based on the intent that you've given that particular partner. So obviously, some of that data is on our side. That's working with our content and platform data to become better at understanding the consumption. And then we're adding that third-party data to it as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned about that kind of one person, one screen. With COVID and people obviously being in lockdown, the trend's gone the other way, hasn't it? Where there's more people watching that shared screen experience,
yeah.
And the kind of rise of the family TV viewing is increased again. Yeah. And it was something we were moving away from, sadly, you know, that fragmented household of everyone watching on their own screen. But now it's actually been really difficult this year to understand who is consuming the content. And we've almost had to sort of default back a little bit to assumptions that we're trying to make. Like you said, if you watch the Kardashians on a Saturday afternoon, can you draw a connection with that person watching, you know, The Only Way is Essex on a Monday morning? Is it the same? You kind of have to make the conclusion that it is. But so our connected TV viewership has gone astronomically through the roof since lockdown happened.
I'll take one question now because it's almost the end of the panel. From Albertian Teb, how do TV2 and ITV guarantee that real people watch the ads? And are you using ad verification tools or do you support those? And I would add to that maybe, how do you define ad impressions? Is it after people are watching an ad after 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or how do you get there?
Yeah.
Christian?
So if I can lead with that one. Yeah. So we have a independent third-party verification, which includes both the ad verification and also a standard for the Danish market, which says that in order for an impression to be able to be measured, it has to be 100% viewable and at least 50% completed, which is not an issue because we have a completion rate of 99.2% or something. So that's not a big issue. And obviously part of our credibility and when we kind of publish these numbers is also that there's very little fraud because of the ecosystem. We don't have bots, we don't have auto views, we don't have a lot of things that mess up these kind of metrics for, in particular, digital video. So we're fairly confident in our numbers, but again, I don't go to check up on people to make sure that they're actually watching it. And we also know that people still leave the telly on when they take a bathroom break. So it's not being measured in that sense, but we're still talking about real people.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, similarly, I mean, building on all those points, very similar perspective from ours in terms of completion rate as well. It's very, very high, especially, you know, you're not going to sit through the ads and then immediately turn the content off unless there's something significant that's happened. I think the, you know, Barb for us in the UK is always a challenge for kind of shifted time viewing as well. So I'm sure you kind of the viewers on this will know that, you know, we're listening for timestamps inside adverts to measure ad performance in the UK on linear television. And because we're in that industry transitional place at the moment where people aren't watching quite in the same way at the same time, you know, the ability to pause TV doesn't necessarily mean pause live TV. It just means stop it until you press play again and it restarts again in line with the live stream. So I don't think the user experience is quite there yet, and it's probably a disjointed one. I wouldn't be surprised if people are waiting for the program to finish so they can then watch it within the leisure that they want to, so they're not governed by this notion of the advertisement being listened to, and they can not skip the ads. You can't skip the ads, like Christian said, for ITV as well. it has to be on screen, it has to be consumed. You can't navigate away and come back and the ad will have finished playing. So there's regulations in place to ensure that happens. Yeah, but I think, you know, is that skewing the consumer experience, and are people becoming wiser and wiser to that idea at the moment? Picture in picture is a good example with iOS at the moment. The ability to watch picture in picture on an iPhone, if the application has that ability, means that you can do something else, you know, whilst the ad is playing. And how does that affect the kind of revenue that advertisers perceive on an iOS device? So I think there's some interesting movements at the moment.
Yeah, true. Unfortunately, we're at the end of the session now. So I thank you very much, both of you, for discussing with us today. And you can also find us later with chats on swap cards if the audience is interested in joining us. So have a good day and hope to talk with you soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
Thank
Rishi.
you.
Nice to meet you. See you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.